So I am 23. I work right now in 911 dispatch, and it's a really new job for me, and I'm really enjoying it. Um, I've always been in a lot of fast-paced jobs. I've loved working with people, and so that was kind of a really good fit for me starting that this year. I'm an only child, and I'm really close to my family. I live alone with my dog, and in the springtime, I like to be outside a lot more. In the winter, I'm much more indoorsy. I love my movies and my books. Yeah. About cluttering specifically, I started doing speech therapy when I started having issues with communication in my new job. And so trying to identify what exactly I needed to work on with my speech therapist, she started to do some research and found this condition called cluttering, which she had never heard of, I had never heard of, and read through the list, realized I do pretty much all of the things. And so I did a lot more research and found things and realized, again, this is something that I do all of those things. And I've always known my whole life that I had a little bit of a difficulty with speech, but I've always just been told I need to slow down, I need to just take a breath, I need to speak more clearly, enunciate, and all those things that I thought I was doing perfectly. And being able to, some people have called it a stutter, but very, very rarely. I've always known that I just didn't have I said I didn't have a speedometer for how I spoke. I just had no awareness if I was going fast or slow. It was all sounded the same, and it always was so bizarre to people. And so I actually, in my research with my speech therapist in the last couple months, I found the book of Too Fast for Words, and that changed my life. That was huge.
Wow.
I read it in like a day's time, and I cried and I highlighted like everything. And I was like, there's actually more to this than just me not speaking slowly enough. And that was incredibly eye opening for me. There's just being able to having someone else being able to explain the way that I felt in some of those circumstances when speech was really difficult. Realizing that there's more things connected to the way I speak than just being too fast. Because that was always a little bit of an insecurity because I've been asked before what language I speak because I live in a English speaking country and people thought I was speaking another language because I was so hard to understand. And people they kind of do that smile and nod when they don't know what I'm saying. And a lot of people will tell me after the fact, they're like, oh, we didn't get any of that. We just don't want to ask you to repeat yourself. And I was like, I wanted you to hear me and I wouldn't be offended. I would just feel bad that you couldn't hear me or couldn't understand me. And so
Mhm.
reading, things that explained things I didn't know were connected. And like I felt so seen and so known. I was like, it was so eye opening that other people had felt that same way or had those same challenges because it felt so isolating because I couldn't just slow down. I couldn't just fix this thing that I was doing. And
Mhm.
so that was really incredible reading that. A lot of relief, knowing that there was something I could put a name to it and that there was something that could be done about it.
Mhm.
Because I'd always felt so stuck by it because I couldn't just slow down and separate my words. That wasn't something I could do very easily or on my own. And so knowing there was a reason and that I wasn't just broken, I was just kind of felt broken a little bit, was very took a lot of weight off my shoulders. It made me feel a lot more empowered to do something about it. That it was actually something that there's a reason. There's something I could do about it. There's something, and it's not just me because that was what it always felt like because no one else sounded like me when they talk. Of course, on recordings because I sound the same to everyone else sounds the same when I hear it to my ears. But yeah, it was very a lot of relief and a lot of empowerment for that. Couple of ways. I have always said, because people say that I talk so fast, and I just never thought I did. I've always just said I don't have a speedometer. I don't have anything that tells me how fast that I'm going. Um, One of the ways that I have explained it to others is that because my thoughts and the words that I'm thinking of saying are going through my mind so rapidly that I just have, which is partly what it feels like a lot of the time, is I have to speak just to keep up with the words that are going through my mind. And so, if those words are gone on my mind, if I move on to the next thought without saying it, it's gone on. I'm derailed. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. And
Mhm.
so that kind of felt like there's this rush, and there's this like time crunch to get all my words out to stay on track of what I was saying. And then Gosh, it feels very disorganized, and sometimes because one of the ways that my coworkers, my trainers have explained it is that they can see kind of the wheels turning when I'm trying to think of questions or think of things to say when I'm on the phone with someone. And they explained it like fireworks going off in my brain, this rapid fire of all the things that I could say or the ways I want to say it. And that's very accurate because I will start a sentence 2 or 3 times because I have like 5 to 10 things I want to say and try to choose the right one and get the one exact sentence out the first time is very challenging. I will start a sentence, then be like, no, 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 I will say it this way. And then like, oh, actually, this is a better question because that one just came out in my brain.
Yeah, yeah.
And so people are like, how do you stay on track? And I was like, oh, I was totally on topic. I just had 5 ways I could have asked this question. And it took me a while to find the best one, but I was so excited to answer it that I just answered it just instinctively first. And that's very challenging still. But yeah, it's just, I have to kind of rein in my words. Like more recently, I've working with my trainer, working with being able to play back recordings of my own speech. The times where I actually sounded slow on the recordings, I was able to explain. It feels like you're, running like you would do as a kid, and someone grabs your arms, like pulling you backwards. And you're still just running full speed, and you feel like you're being like pulled backwards while you're trying to sprint, and that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah.
Like someone's just pulling the reins on a horse, trying to keep me on track, keep me at a normal speed. It feels restraining to try and slow down. The speed definitely, because when I talk slower, I know it's easier for me to be clear, to be more concise, and think of my words a little better. But speed's always been the most predominant thing, I think. I've been told since I was 3 or 4 years old that I should be an auctioneer. And so I had that kind of speed, that I have this natural talent. And for a while I actually considered it. But keeping the speed under control and keeping the just kind of the order of what I want to say, because there's so much going on in my mind that it all wants to come out of my mouth at once. And so keeping one thing at a time at a normal pace, because I get tripped up on my words very easily when I get excited, especially because I have this, 10 things just ready to say in my brain, and then they all want to come out at once. And it's like a traffic jam. And of course, they want to come out very quickly. And so the speed monitoring and being able to keep that consistent, because I know I have that like the spurts where I will have, I'll be talking fairly normal, and then I will have a section where I will be very, very fast, and then it'll go back to normal, and I don't catch any of it. It's very difficult. I've been told I have a very difficult cadence of speech to keep up with. I've been told my sentences are like one big long word with a breath at the end. And like there's no punctuation, there's just one word and a breath, and that's your sentence. And that's very frustrating and very difficult to change. Yeah. One of the more telltale signs I have that I know I'm not speaking very well is I will feel very tense, or I'll feel kind of out of breath. And I've been told a lot I need to breathe more during my speech, which I don't like. Of course I breathe. What are you talking about? And just that kind of jumbled feeling in my mouth with my tongue. I've always felt a little bit tongue tied. I actually, my speech therapist and other people in my life have kind of noticed that I do have more restricted movement of my tongue, and so that kind of affects how I speak as well. So it always sounds a little bit like I have a lisp, or I get tongue tied. And the one thing I could pinpoint more recently on listening to recordings of my speech and being able to think about what I did in that exact moment, what I was thinking, what I was focusing on, is it just felt very stiff and very like foreign in my mouth. Like it felt like it was using a lot of muscles I didn't know were there. And that was some of the more clearer speech I'd ever had. And it felt completely different because I've talked this way for 20 years. And yeah, it just was very, it was very foreign. But it was a good feeling to know that I could do something differently. Yeah. I can't think of anything specific that they've said, but I know they kind of say it's my own language, it's my own speech. And there's like, they'll kind of pause for a minute and be like, hold on, I heard you, but I had to process everything you just said. and then they'll be like, I got most of it, now repeat this part.
Hmm.
And it's all lighthearted, and I never take offense to it. But when I was younger, it was definitely like I never got made fun of, but I could tell people didn't react to me the same when I would speak. And so that was very, challenging. But they yeah, my one when I started to make some improvements, one of my friends told me that I sound when I was speaking more clearly, um, said that I sound like an off-brand Siri and like a robotic voice because it sounded like a whole new person when I spoke that way. And I just laughed, and I didn't realize it made that much difference, because I
Hmm.
had never heard that before. Um, I think a lot of practice, and a lot of I think input from those around me because it's so hard to hear when it's changing. And so thankfully my trainer and my coworkers are very good at knowing that that's what I need to know to change it. So being able to say, hey, we didn't get any of that, or hey, slow down. Knowing that, and we've kind of had the talk that if you tell me that and I pause, I start again, if I don't sound slower, it's not because I'm not trying. It's just that I'm trying and I don't know if it's working or not. And so I'm not offended by them telling me that. It's just that cue that I need to know um, that it's getting better or not. And so being able to have that constant feedback of, hey, that was really good, or hey, no, that was, totally unhearable,
Hmm.
is really useful. I think a lot of practice, a lot of confidence, I think, because when I started to get some of that awareness and some of those little wins, when I would be able to speak more clearly, um, a lot of other things fell into place during my job, and just my sense of, you know, kind of assertiveness, or um, the idea that I could be in control of something that I didn't feel like I could control before. Um, but yeah, I think and then the time to practice some of those things that feel very strange, because I have exercises from my speech therapist, and it sounds so weird doing it that way. They feel ridiculous doing these little exercises, but having time to do that with myself, and then get used to hearing it that way, because it probably sounds way more normal to everyone else when I implement that into my speech. Gosh, I would love to be much more ahead in my job. I would love to be, I'd love to have a family by then. I I think I expected these next couple of years to be a lot of shaping for my confidence. And a lot of that comes from speech, because people a lot of times can't understand me. And like right now, it's still like, I feel like I'm kind of in an interview mode where that's normally easier for me to speak, but I'm trying to speak like I normally would for the sake of, this recording. But the yeah, being able to be more ahead of my job, where I would be under more pressure and more responsibility, where normally that extra stress and extra load is causing me to tense up and speak more uncontrollably.
Hmm.
And so having a little bit more power over that, where I could excel past my current phase of my job, and being either a trainer or being in a tactical dispatch where it's SWAT type of calls, and I'd be doing a lot of typing, a lot of speaking, a lot of things like that, would be very, very empowering. Yeah, I would love to be just, yeah, more confident, because I think that is a huge thing with this for me that I didn't realize my whole life. Um, Feeling better about myself and how others perceive me. I've always been very shy and fairly insecure a lot of my life. And um, I think a lot of that, more than I realized, came from the way I was perceived, just based on how I could communicate with others. Reading the book that you wrote, was a lot of those stories resonated a lot, where people, wouldn't take me very seriously, or they wouldn't be able to hear me, or they would just react differently when I was trying to express myself or be involved in a conversation or things like that. And I've always loved talking with people. I've always loved being able to express myself. And so when that was very challenging, that was a lot of caused a lot of insecurity. And a lot of times people have more recent, not correction, correct, not a lot of times. A couple of times people have told me that I seem very high strung and I'm like so stressed out by something that, and it's only happened to me like 2 times. And all my friends and family who know me very well know that that's not the case. I'm pretty laid back, I'm easygoing, but because of the way I speak, that people think that I'm anxious or that I'm stressed or that I'm high strung, which is totally different than how I perceive myself. And so having more security around that, having more control over that, would be a lot of bring a lot of confidence. I've done a lot of job interviews in my life. I've done a lot of um several job I changed jobs a lot trying to find my career. And so that was always a place that I felt fairly confident in how I was able to speak because I knew I would have time to think of the questions or my answers to the questions, or I would have, I'd be in this very poised, very thought through, very certain frame of mind. And I knew that I had to impress. I knew I had to focus on what I was saying and how I was saying it. And I was fairly familiar with a lot of the questions they would be asking me because, either I knew the things they want to know or I'd done these kind of questions before. And so for this job that I have now, this was a much bigger deal. This is my career. This is a different interview. And so I looked up some kind of practice questions just to have something. And I sat down with my family and had them, interview me with these questions, which was very strange because I never like sat across the table from them and just had them ask me questions like that. And so I had to kind of do my interview voice, which I've always said I probably my best form of speaking. And they were always, because they know my normal type of speech, they were always a little bit anxious for me going into situations like that because they wanted me to be understood and they couldn't imagine that it would be that much different. And we went through these questions. We went through some of the answers, and I had some things I had written down some answers ahead of time that I knew I might want to be talking about. And so all my thoughts were fairly organized and very clear. And I felt very succinct and very like I was communicating pretty well, and their reactions were pretty entertaining because they were like, why don't you talk this all the time? you know, like why do you not
Yeah.
always talk this slow and this clear and this confident? And I was just like, I don't know, like it feels the same. I just know that I have to talk like I'm instructing someone or talk like I am giving this huge speech and I have to be prepared with what I'm saying. But some of the questions I didn't have all my answers prepared, but I felt like I had the time to take a second to formulate my answers, and that was a lot as well. Um, and then more recently, there's been a few just little scenarios where I will be talking over the radio when I'm doing my dispatching, and so there'll be things where I'm reading back. It's this parts where I'm reading things back. We will read back a return on a vehicle or something, and so I'm going through, the color, the year, the type of vehicle, who it's registered to, and reading those off. I have a pretty good cadence, and so some of those transmissions sound very, very clear, and those are something I've practiced a lot and I've done a lot, and so that's whenever I get to do those, it's kind of a relief because I know it'll come off pretty well.